Okay, so welcome back. This is hopefully going to be the last part of the video. I know it's overrunning for such a short thing inside of a system, but you know, it's best to explain everything as best as possible. Okay, so now what we want to do is, once we have this successful form filled out and the form's been submitted and there's no errors, we need to go ahead and we need to construct an array, much like we did in register. Let me just scroll down here, called register data. So in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and in fact I won't copy it. I'll do this as it is, but I'm going to call this update data, and this is going to be equal to an array. So the first key is going to be equal to something, and that is first underscore name. What's this going to be equal to? Well, $_post first name. I can comma separate this now, come down to a new line, another new line just to save a bit of time. This is going to be last name, this is going to be last name, this is going to be email, and this here is obviously going to be email. So let me just tidy this up very slightly. Okay, so we're creating an array called update data, and this is going to be passed through to an update function. It's going to send these field names, so like these must correspond to what's in the database, and this is the actual data here. So if I go ahead and print our update data and I click update, there's no errors obviously, so we're now printing out this array. So we've got first name Billy, last name Garrett, email equals billy@phpacademy.org. So that data will be then sent through to the database. I know it's the same as what we've already got, but we're just going to update everything when the user clicks update. There's not much of a speed difference if we, if we were to go through and check whether something had changed. It's a long and tedious and actually slower process. Okay, so now that we've done that, we need to pass this data through to the update user function, which we haven't created yet, so we'll have to do that. So we'll pass this update data variable, which is an array. We'll then redirect the user to a specific location, which is going to be this page, so settings.php with success on the end. We've already looked at this as well, and then we're just going to exit here. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to incorporate this success message. We don't want to update this just yet. We'll leave that till last because it's slightly more complicated. So when the user updates their details successfully, now watch this, updates, you'll see this success has bobbed on the end here. We need to sort of catch this and then not show this form and show a little error, a success message instead. So here I'm going to say if something, do something. So if empty $_get this time, so we're getting this get variable called success. If that is equal to false, i.e. it exists, and if is set, so if it's set is equal to true, and empty $_get success is equal to true. And if we look back at our register page, we did this here. Well, I didn't say is equal to true or is equal to false, but this isn't really required because this will return true or false. This will return, true or false. Anyway, if that's the case, then we want to go ahead and just output a message. So I'm going to say echo your details have been updated. Otherwise, what do we want to do? Well, we want to do all of this here, all of the form, and we want to end the closing bracket there. So that means we can go ahead and we can just nicely indent all of that there. Okay, so if this success message is set, all we want to do is that. Otherwise, we want to do all of this, and then we end that there, and that's the ending part of that block. You can see it's highlighted red. If we go all the way up, this is the start of it here. So let's go ahead and test that and hit enter where we've got this success thing on the end of our URL, and it says your details have been updated. They haven't been updated, this is just our success page. So when I click update, that updates our, well, it hasn't updated yet, but that says we've updated our details. Otherwise, if we don't include the relevant information, we get this error. Okay, so now let's go ahead and focus on this update user function, which I commented out there, so we didn't return an error. We need to go ahead and build this update user function. So let's go ahead and open our core functions users file with all of our functions to do with our user in, and let's go ahead and I'm literally going to take this registration function here, register user, and I'm going to paste it here. Get rid of that space. So the reason I've pasted it is because not a lot of this actually, a lot of it isn't required, but it's relatively similar, so it's just going to save a bit of time. So obviously this is called update user, and we're sending update data. We need to walk through the array and sanitize each value. That's important, so we need to keep that in there. We don't need to encrypt any passwords. We're not using this method of grabbing fields, and we don't need to email the user. The query is going to remain here, but it's going to be a different query. So here we are, pretty much starting from scratch. I didn't really save that much time by copying it. Okay, so what do we want to do here? Well, I'm going to create a new array called update, and this is going to hold the structure of the query that we're going to use to update the user. Now I'll just quickly go through how a query looks when we want to update some data. So I'm going to hop over to my database, and I'm going to update this username. I'm going to update this first name here to Billy or William or something like that. So that's where the user ID is equal to 14. So I'm going to click on my SQL tab, and here I'm going to say update, and this is the syntax for updating values. I'm going to say update users, which is my table. I'm going to say set, first name is equal to William. In fact, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to update more than one field, because that's what we're going to be doing in this case. I use a comma, and then I don't say set again, but this time I use the field name again. So I'm going to say last name is equal to, and we'll just say something like Smith, okay? And we're going to say where user ID is equal to 14. Now, this might be confusing, but let me just go over it. We're updating this field, this table here, which is users, contains all our users. We're setting this field to this value, and then we're setting this field to this value, but only where the user ID is equal to 14. Let's just click go. It says one row affected. Let's go ahead and browse William Smith. Okay, so it's updated this data. Let's just go ahead and change that back, but that's essentially just a sneak peek of what we're going to be doing here. So what we need to do is when this data is passed in this update data array, we need to put it into a string that we can pass through to a query. So I'm going to create an array up here. So update equals array, and then what we want to do is we want to loop through this update data that we've passed through. So let's just get rid of register. We need to loop through all of these. So first name will be in the first loop, last name, then email. So for each update data as field data, oops, I've got the $sign. So for every item we want to loop through, we want to append something onto this update array. Now what do we want to append on? Well, we're obviously appending on field is equal to data. Okay, I need to escape these two characters here, by the way. So field equals data. So all we need to do is replace this in here, and I'm concatenating on here field data. Okay, so we're starting the string here, a little backtick, the field, and then end the backtick is equal to single quote data end single quote. So now what I'm going to do is print r update, and then I'm going to kill the script. So let's go ahead and click update. We're not seeing it because we're not calling the function. Let's go ahead and do that. Update. Array walk expects parameter 1 to be array null given. Okay, so let's see what might have gone wrong there. There we go. We didn't change that to update data. Fair enough. Refresh, update. Okay, so now we've got array first name equal to Billy. So we've got this, it looks odd, but we've got essentially field equals Billy, last name equals Garrett. So we're starting to bring together the structure of our query. Now, how do I get this into a string form? Well, I can just go ahead and I can use implode. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, but I'll do that within my query. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. Bring this MySQL query up here. We don't need any of this because we're not inserting any data. We're updating users, and usually we'd say set blah equals blah, but we don't need to do that. We need to implode this update array to make it into a string and join everything together and separate each set thing by commas, if that makes sense. In fact, let me just go ahead and kill the script here and echo implode update. So this is our array that we're imploding by, and what we're imploding by, a comma. So now what's going to happen is this is going to be each of these. So this, and this is going to be now separated by a comma, which is exactly what we want. So when I click update, we've got first name equals Billy, comma, last name equals Garrett, comma, email equals billy@phpacademy.org. Perfect, that's what we want. So we now know that when we can do that within our query to sort of reconstruct this format. So I'm going to say set, I'm going to concatenate implode update, and I'm going to implode that by a comma and a space, where user ID is equal to $_session user ID, unless we have a variable stored for that already. Let me just go ahead and check. Yeah, we have session _ user ID, so I can go ahead and instead of using the actual session, paste that in there. Perfect. So now this query will be executed. We've already seen the result of this this implode here, and it will update them specific fields where the user ID is equal to the currently logged in user. So let's go ahead and try and update some details and see what result we get. So I'm going to change the first name here to William. I'm going to click update. Your details have been updated. Well, let's go ahead and click home. Nothing's happened. This I would have expected to have changed. So let's just go over to our database, and again nothing's changed. So why hasn't this changed? Well, we need to go ahead and debug. You may have seen the error, but I haven't. So or die on the end of this, and I'm going to be using MySQL error. Now what this is going to do is if this query fails to execute properly or it fails to run, MySQL will return an error, and this error can be picked up using this MySQL error function. And what we can do with this is we can kill the script if this fails, and then or die, and then output the result of the error. So let's go ahead to settings. I'm going to change this again to William, and clicking update will now show us an error. So the first thing is undefined variable session user ID. So that's session user ID there. Session user ID is equal to session user ID. So this is you have an error in your content. Okay, so I think the best thing to do here would be to I think this is because of global, yeah, this will be because of global sort of variables. If I go ahead here and say global session user ID, and I go ahead and refresh this. Oh, it's worked. Oh, okay, there we go. Alright, so okay, the problem here was then this variable is not being able to be accessed within this function because it's not global, so we can't access this variable within our function. So we have a couple of options. We can do this, which is slightly slower, well, not, yeah, very slightly slower, or we can just declare this as an actual session, so $_session user ID, like that. Now it's entirely up to you. Doing it this way with the global will mean that if you ever need to change this for any reason here, it will make it a lot easier. So I'll go ahead and leave that as it is now, but just a couple of words warning, it's slightly slower. Anyway, now the data has been updated, so perfect. So when I go ahead and type in, say, William Smith, and I go ahead and click update, everything's updated. Go back to settings, it's changed. Change this back to Billy Garrett, click update, this changes here, and settings have been, details have been updated. Okay, so a bit of debugging there. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that or die now because we don't need it, but the reason the query failed was because the session user ID variable wasn't being able to be picked up, and therefore this was obviously just blank. Okay, so what we've done now is we've successfully allowed the user to update their settings. If you needed to add more fields here, it's extremely simple. You just go ahead, you don't need to do anything in here. All you need to do is you need to obviously add more fields, and you need to add this stuff in here, making sure obviously you do your validation and you define which fields you are actually requiring to be entered or submitted by the user.